listening to the Post-Apocalyptic Media Podcast, your source for all the latest post-apocalyptic news.
Hello and welcome to this first spoiler special episode, all about The Walking Dead Season 11, Episode 4. My name is Shawn, and I'm doing this as a supplement to our regular podcast because I am no longer going to leave giant spoilers on our podcast for anyone who hasn't seen the episodes yet. So I figured I would do a separate episode, kind of like a breakaway supplement, and it will start with this episode 4 of season 11. Now, let's get into it because I'm excited. I'm really enjoying this season so far. I've said this before on the podcast, but for anyone who's just catching this as kind of a first timer, I was a huge Walking Dead fan for many years, and then I kind of fell off a little bit there, right about when everybody else did, like season 7, right around there. But then I came back, rewatched everything again, and then really got into season 9 and 10. Couldn't wait for season 11, and now it's out, so I am making a podcast about it. And that's the progression of events right there. So in season 11, episode 4, it's called Rendition. Now, we saw in the previous episode, there was no Daryl, right? We saw a big battle at the beginning between the Reapers and Maggie's group, and then we saw Daryl kind of slip away, and we're like, Daryl, whoa, what are you doing? Hey. And so I looked on the IMDb, and it said, it was a little cheat, I know. Little spoiler, but it said episode 4 was going to be all about Daryl and Dog. Well, I was happy to hear that. So here it is. It's all about Daryl and Dog. And there was also a teaser that said that he will meet an old friend or something like that. They said like an old, someone will reappear from his past or something like that. And I feel like a dummy for not figuring out who that was, which I will get to in a second. But yeah, that was a good one. So we see the scene again where they're fighting with the Reapers and Daryl slipping off. But then now we follow Daryl, right? So we see that Daryl goes off and he goes to the Reapers HQ, and he's kind of sneaking around. He does a few little maneuvers, like he throws a rock to, distract the guard, and the guard goes off and, stuff like that. But he eventually gets caught. They all jump in front of him. They're all masked, like we saw the Reapers with their heavy military jackets and their masks. And it's scary, it's scary for Daryl because he's outnumbered. And they grab Dog, first of all. Dog runs off and they grab him, and then you hear this yelp. And that's the yelp that we heard back in the beginning when they started showing the teasers for season 11. And it played a yelp. And I say that because it's like the infamous yelp, because everyone at that point was like, no, they can't kill off Dog, right? We'll kill off Daryl before we kill off Dog, right? So people kind of freaked out about that, because also when it happened in the trailer, Daryl yells out, no. So you get that. And that's this part right here. Well, of course, they're not killing Dog. They're just taking him away. And he yelps a little bit, but it scares Daryl. Then they grab Daryl. They actually are able to... they grab him, but they don't take him yet. He gets away, right? And it seems like it's the next day, because then all of a sudden it's daylight out, and he has his hands just completely immersed in zombie guts. And I imagine he's doing it to cover up his scent. We've seen him do that before with the Whisperers and stuff like that, but they would cover themselves. He was just covering his hands, and it looked like his face a little bit. I don't know. I think if I was in that world, I might, I'd probably do it, but, oh man, there'd probably be some puking involved. I don't know. So while he's doing that, he gets confronted by one of the Reapers, and it's one that he saw previously. I guess it was the night before, because it was nighttime. And you don't know it's a she yet. Well, you can kind of tell, but she is standing there with Dog, and he's like, oh, and I remember watching this thinking, oh, that Reaper has Dog like restrained, holding him back. but it doesn't really look like it. Dog's kind of just sitting there, and Daryl's like looking at Dog and looking at the Reaper like, what do you want? Just I'm not part of that group. Leave me alone. I'm not part of that group you just saw me with. I promise. He's trying to convince them that. And they're like, well, we think you are. We're going to go ahead and we're going to capture you. So she has the people, her like minions come out of the sides all around him. They surround Daryl and they take him. And what's funny, right before that, Daryl's like, come here, Dog. Come on. He's like, I'm getting out of here. I'll leave you alone. I'm not part of that group. I'm leaving. Come on, Dog. And Dog's like, no. So she unmasks herself. She takes off her mask, and you see it's Leah. And I remember when I saw this, I was like, first of all, I was like, who's that? Who's that lady? Like, for a couple seconds, I'm like, she looks familiar. Who's that? Well, it's Leah. Leah is the one who was Dog's original owner. She stayed with Daryl in that cabin for forever. Remember when he was like fighting with, I guess that was season 9, somewhere around there. It was a little while ago. He was like fighting with Carol, and he went off and he found the love of his life in this Leah lady, and they, were living in a survivalist cabin, and they were doing great, and they were completely like, well, I don't know. I don't know if they were in love, but they seemed like it. And Dog was her dog. And she left at some point, and then he was supposed to wait for her, but he didn't. He actually left, or no, I think he left first, and then he came back. I think I don't remember exactly. Some reason he left, he came back, but before he came back, she left, because she thought he was gone. So she thought he left, and then he came back, and he thought she left. So they both thought each other left. And then Daryl ended up with Dog. So there was that whole thing. So anyway, that's Leah, and she's back, and she's a badass because she's with the Reapers, but she calls the Reapers her family. And we learn later that actually she knew a lot of the members of the Reapers before. When we meet Pope, who's the leader of the Reapers, he says that they all knew each other from the military. They were in the hills of Afghanistan, he said, as mercenaries, I guess. Privateers. And she tells Daryl this too. She says, I used to be, these were my brothers, and we fought together. We fought battles together. So that was interesting to kind of get that backstory of Leah, of the Reapers, and then of Pope also. And so at this point, Daryl, I don't know, he seems like he's okay with everything. Like they do torture him a little bit. They waterboard him to get more out of him. They're convinced that he's part of Maggie's group, which he is, and they're convinced that he knows more about all of this than he's letting on, which he does. But they can't get it out of him, so they're getting a little frustrated, and so they try waterboarding him. They, have him back, and they're pouring water basically down his throat and nose. And I have to say, the point where they bring him back up and they take the hood off of him after they've been waterboarding him for a few minutes or whatever, and Daryl's voice, it's really, I mean, it's I don't know what they did. Either it's really good acting or something, and they did something to his voice, but he sounds like he just had gallons of water poured down his throat. Like, that's what he sounds like. He's like a really rough, like a raspy voice. Really cool. All right, so at this point, Daryl still refuses to admit that he knows Maggie and Maggie's group. But later on, Leah comes back in, and she's crying to him, and she's saying, they figure out that they didn't realize that one another left first, and then she didn't realize Daryl came back looking for her. And so she starts crying, and they're talking about their relationship, and she doesn't think that they would have worked out, but she does reveal that she still has feelings for him. And I think that's important because I think that at some point, this is my prediction, I haven't read the comics, so I don't really know. Those of you who read the comics might be like, well, of course this is going to happen. But I feel like at some point he's going to save Leah from the Reapers. And that's a tough sell because she knew them way before she knew him. But I feel like the walls are breaking down a little bit. She's a little, she's not really into what they're into anymore, especially with Pope, which I'll talk about in a second. So yeah, they're talking together, and finally Daryl says, you know what, I'll give you some information, because she says, please just give me something so that Pope doesn't kill you. You know, Pope is not happy with you, and I'm here to get something out of you. Just tell me something that will save your life. And so he says, okay, I'll tell you what. The other group are just people I traded with. I don't know them, not part of their group. I've traded with them, and that's it. And there's a woman who's in charge, and then there's also a tall, thin man, which Negan, I never thought of Negan as a tall, thin man. I mean, tall, I don't know. It's weird. I had to think about. I had to ask my wife. Thin, tall, thin. What is that, Negan? And she's like, yeah, okay. And then he mentions Gabriel. He says there's I think he says a pastor, a preacher with a shotgun, which I think is funny. So he names, those three. But then he says that they have a lot of people with them. They have a ton of people, way more than the Reapers. Like, I guess the Reapers have like 15 people. He was counting them. And he's like, yeah, they have a leadership. They have a lot of people with them. You might not want to get tangled up with them. So she goes off and she tells Pope about this. This is when we get introduced to Pope. Pope is the leader of the Reapers. He's also kind of, I don't like Pope. Can I just say that right up front? He's very, they're trying to make him like a religious person, which never really works out. Because of course he's not really religious, because he's like a crazy murderer. So I don't know. It's one of those things where he's like, that's his thing that he associates with. And he talks a little bit about that later, but anyway, so he was with them in Afghanistan, and he is a nut job. Let me just say that. One thing that bothers me about him is his accent is just, it switches. I wrote about this in the article on my write-up, and I say, his accent switches between like South African to like Forrest Gump. I think he's supposed to be from Georgia, so he's supposed to have like this Southern accent, but it's over the top. And the guy, the actor is British, so it's understandable that a little bit of that accent will come through. I just don't think that it really, I guess I'm hypersensitive about accents too. I don't know what it is, especially Southern accents. I grew up in the North in the United States, and I've moved to the Southern United States, and so I kind of am very familiar. I pretty much spent half my life in each place, and I'm very familiar with the actual authentic accents on both sides, and it just bothers me so much when people have this fakey, like 1800 Savannah, Georgia accent, and they're, like it's Gone with the Wind or something. It's not. Anyway, so that bothered me about him. And the guy he's no Negan. He's the antagonist of this whole season, or at least the first half of the season. But he doesn't have, he's not Negan. He's not even the governor. He doesn't have that about him where people actually liked Negan even after he killed Glenn and everyone, and after he was just the biggest jerk in the world. There were like Negan fan clubs on Facebook. People love Negan. And now he's, a good guy. So it's a little different, but I don't see Pope having that same kind of following. I just don't see it. He just rubs me the wrong way. So anyway, another kind of, character that he reminds me of is in Apocalypse Now. Robert Duvall's character, Lieutenant Colonel Bill Kilgore. He's the one that said, what did he say? Something like, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. That's who Pope reminds me of too. He reminds me a lot of him, which is I really liked Robert Duvall's character in Apocalypse Now, and I really don't like Pope, so that part is different, but just the way he kind of interacts with everyone, it reminds me of that. So one of the reasons, I keep saying I don't like this guy, but one of the reasons I don't like him is there's a scene toward the end where he takes one of the people who were in the battle with Maggie's group, and he turns him around and he looks at his injuries. He notices he doesn't have any injuries on his back or on his front, but he just has them on his back. So he deduces that this guy only got injured while running away. Of course, that is, cowardice. So he confronts the guy about it while they're all sitting around the campfire, and Daryl's right there. And he says, how'd you get these wounds on your back? And the guy's like, oh, I was fighting. I promise. And so Pope wasn't having any part of that, and he pushed the guy into the fire and held him down in the fire, and it literally was sizzling. The guy was sizzling to death, which is a pretty intense scene. And especially for Daryl. Daryl saw this, and he's like, whoa, I was starting to, I don't think he was going to become a part of the Reapers, but he was trying to get on their good side. He passed this fire test earlier. I keep jumping back and forth, but he passed this fire test earlier where they put Leah in a room with him where he was tied up, and then there was someone poured gas under the door, and they lit the place on fire. It was just burning down. They wanted to see if he would save Leah, like if he really still had feelings for her. And of course he did. He busted the window out, got her out, and then he jumped out. So they were like, okay, we know you're good. You can be part of us now. And I think Daryl was probably like, well, thanks, but I'm not sure if that's really the path I want to go down. And then this happened where he threw the guy in the fire and he burned him. And I think Daryl was like, all right, I need to get the F out of here. This is not for me. How do I get out of here? And I think also another part of that scene was earlier. Pope was talking to Daryl, and he was asking him about his own scars and his own, cuts and scrapes and burns and stuff like that. And he says, I noticed you don't have any. You were just in that battle, that big battle we just had, and you don't really have any injuries from that. Why is that? And Daryl just says, I've been through worse. And he was kind of covering up for the fact that he didn't really participate. He kind of ran off to do his own thing. So I think Pope not only picked up on that Daryl ran away, but he also wanted to show him that he is not one to put up with that kind of thing. And I guess he's kind of giving Daryl a chance by killing this other guy, saying, if you're going to be part of us, you have to fight. But Daryl is probably not down with that, so he's looking for a way out. And I'm hoping, like I said earlier, I'm hoping that as Daryl is trying to find a way out, away from these Reapers, that he is trying to get Leah away too. I think he will. So, why else would they bring her in a couple seasons ago in such a big, that was a big chunk of that season was their life together. And then just to have her come back to die, it's possible, but I feel like she's going to keep going. So we'll see. All right. And then, so that's that whole episode. That's basically where it ends. For episode 5, it'll be called Out of the Ashes. And we'll talk about that in the next one of these little things. But let me know how you like this. Let me know if you prefer me to do little separate spoiler specials that are outside of the normal podcast, or if you like reading it, because I do a write-up of these too over at postapocalyptic.com. And yeah, just let me know in the comments here or on the site. Yeah, so you can check out postapocalyptic.com. You can check out all of our social media. There will be links to all that in this video's description and also the audio version's description. So you can go check all that out. You can check out the write-up. You can check out more on The Walking Dead. You can check out more on everything post-apocalyptic that we write about there. It's a good time. So thanks everyone for watching, and I will see you next time.